Seattle is when we showed Noir City, the international edition. And I just wanted to show that little montage again, not only because I could watch Serena's videos over and over again endlessly, but since I'm doing this sort of Noir 101 primer here this week, I did want to have a moment where we could appreciate the fact that when I first learned about film noir and loved film noir and studied it and read the novels that it's based on and followed the directors who really made it, I also thought that it was a peculiarly American phenomenon. And I have since learned otherwise, that it was something that was actually, interestingly enough, to just say we influenced them or they influenced us is insufficient to qualify just how unique an international phenomenon the noir movement was in the mid-20th century. Clearly, American filmmakers not only were influenced by their European counterparts when they arrived here in America to start making their films, but this cross-pollination went on to an incredible degree. Like I said the other night, if you took all of the foreigners and the emigres who ended up in Hollywood making these films, if they had never arrived here, cinema history would be entirely different, and so it's worth acknowledging that all of those clips that you saw from Japan, Akira Kurosawa's noir films, Drunken Angel and Stray Dog in the late 1940s, films from Spain like Death of a Cyclist and Quai de Favre from Henri-Georges Clouzot in France in 1947. These are films being made contemporaneous with what we now know as the American film noir movement in the 1940s. So it was an international thing, and it always cracks me up when, in working with the Film Noir Foundation, we receive donations from all over the world to help us do this. So, film noir has become one of our great cultural exports, like jazz and burlesque. Film noir is a great export, but it's not just us giving it to them. It is definitely a two-way street. So ask me about that at some point, and I'll tell you about donors and relationships we have with people in Iran, and in China, and Japan, and Mexico, and Argentina. It's pretty extraordinary. But the film that you're about to see is 100% American film noir. This is like the quintessence of noir. So in this festival up till now, we have gone through like the early proto-noirs, and then we got to 1945 with Scarlet Street, that is sort of like, okay, now the genre, if you want to call it that, is in formation. But in 1946, it crested in Hollywood. The Postman Always Rings Twice was made that year at MGM, and when MGM made a film noir, you knew that it was officially a movement, because that was nothing that they were really interested in doing. The cultural forces had taken over in the industry and in the public. So the dark corner is what a lot of people think of when they say, oh yeah, film noir, isn't that where, and then you fill in the blanks. There's kind of an alcoholic detective who's been betrayed, and these guys are after him, and he's haunted by some incident in his past, and he's got a trusty gal Friday who bails him out of trouble, and yes, that is the film we're talking about, and this is it. And 20th Century Fox wasn't the studio you might expect that movie to come from, because that would have probably been made at RKO or at Warner Brothers, maybe at Universal. But next to MGM, Fox was the most glamorous studio in town. But in 1944, they had a huge and somewhat unexpected hit with the movie Laura, and they were looking for ways to capitalize on that as the war was coming to an end. And they saw the success that other studios had had with Murder, My Sweet, adaptation of Raymond Chandler, with The Big Sleep at Warner Brothers, where Bogart was teamed with Bacall, and all of that just American crime fiction, hard-boiled detective variety had reached its peak, and so Fox jumped in. And it's interesting to note that in invariably an actor like Dana Andrews, who was under contract to Fox, would have been cast in this movie. But because so many actors were actually in the armed forces at this time, serving their country, Dana Andrews was stretched a little thin. And so Fox and a lot of the studios had second-tier leading men who got their chance to step up and appear as the headliner, which is the case in this film with an actor named Mark Stevens. And Mark Stevens is a pretty interesting case in his own right. I mean, he never went on to be a big star, but in the 1950s, he became a very successful businessman in the entertainment industry and would become his own producer, director, and make independent films like Cry Vengeance and Timetable, which is a really good heist film if you ever have a chance to see that. And struck out on his own and did quite well for himself in the 1950s. Obviously, the plan was, let's make this thing the hard-boiled version of Laura, so they cast Clifton Webb. If you've seen Laura, you know that Waldo Lydecker, the character he plays in that movie, is one of the great characters in movies of all time, really. And he's back playing, guess what? He's the same guy again. I mean, he's called Hardy Cathcart in this movie, but it's Waldo Lydecker again, right? And the same year this was made, William Bendix, who is like your favorite movie bulldog, you know, he's not, is he human? Is he canine? I can't quite tell. He was in The Glass Key before this and in The Blue Dahlia over at Paramount, and Fox borrowed him to play the thuggish character who's tracking Mark Stevens down in this movie. And as the Gal Friday, of course, this is early Lucille Ball. And to see Lucille Ball in a film noir is somewhat of a revelation. I wish I could tell you that she enjoyed the experience, but she has publicly stated that making The Dark Corner was the worst experience of her professional life because she despised director Henry Hathaway so much he never stopped complaining during the making of this movie that he was too good a director to be saddled with a no-talent actress. I think she showed him. But it is kind of amazing how good she is in this movie and her ability to throw off these hard-boiled wisecracks just like the guys. You can see where she's going when you watch her in this movie. And it's just a shame that the movie is, you know, we love our film noir, but come on, let's face it, Lucille Ball was made for Technicolor. And she had that hair, you know, and which you don't get to see in this movie at all. So you get to see the gams, which are on full display in this movie, and they make endless cracks about it. But she is just terrific in this film. So, sorry Henry Hathaway, I really dissed you there in the introduction, but he did make a number of really good film noir movies at Fox, including Kiss of Death and Call Northside 777, and went on to be, you know, a legend in the business, really, all the way up to his later films like True Grit and all that. So, quite an extraordinary director in his own right. So, having said all that, you know where this is going. This is what you know, you love. This is like Film Noir 101. The audience is going to erupt when Mark Stevens shows what a two-fisted drinker he is in this movie. It's a great little sight gag. So enjoy The Dark Corner.